Assalamu alaikum family, it's your brother Landon X. This is Nation Town TV, and what we're about to get into, we're gonna go ahead and deal with this Gucci versus Jeezy versus, which had a lot of people talking. It brought up a lot of topics, but the interesting thing is that this so-called battle or versus between two rappers actually exposed all of us. It didn't really expose Jeezy, it didn't really expose Gucci, but it exposed us. And I'm gonna get into that. Let's get it.
I was told to deliver this message.
Assalamu alaikum family, it's your brother, as I said before, brother Landon X, and this is Nation Town TV Live, and this is actually going to be a special episode. I guess you could call it a hybrid episode, hip-hop autopsy, but also exposed, as you see at the bottom of your screen, because this Gucci versus Jeezy situation that was very entertaining. It was very insightful. It brought a lot of things out between these two brothers. But for me, what was really interesting is how it brought a lot of things to the surface with the viewers. Millions of people watched it. About 2 million people watched it live. So that means by now, probably anywhere from 5 to 10 million have actually seen it. And it was the talk. It was the talk of not just, hip hop fans, but, you have to be under a rock to have not at least heard one thing or the other about this. But we're going to get into that. But first, let me start in the proper fashion. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God. No matter what's going on verses, there is no God but Allah, who appeared to us in the person of this man, Master Fard Muhammad, to whom praises are due forever. I further bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger, but to be right and exact, I must point out that the Holy Quran promises us in Surah 10, verse 47, as well as in Surah 16, Ayat 36, that a messenger would be raised for every nation, not some nations, not a couple of nations, but every nation. And that messenger for us is, of course, the most honorable Elijah And I would know nothing of either one of those men if it was not for the divine intervention of our leader, teacher, and guide in our midst today, the man that taught me everything I know about Master Fard Muhammad and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but even about myself. I'm speaking of none other than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and in those three great names, I greet the Nation Town family in the words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. Shout out to everybody chiming in. Shout out Sister Valerie. Wa alaikum salam, dear sister. Definitely hit us up with your questions and comments. Y'all know what I'm about to say. We ain't going to be on here long, but we going to be on here strong. But let's get right down to it. Before we do that, I got to point out, got to deal with our sponsors. Our number one sponsor, brought to you by nationtownstore.com. Also, doforself.net. If you have not experienced the one-of-a-kind experience of doforself.net, make sure you do yourself that favor and hit up doforself.net. But I also want to point out today's Do For Self City of the Day. For those that don't know, what we do and what we try to do is that every Nation Town TV Live, we go to a random city, well, a kind of random city, and we do find a random business, black-owned business, and we give you the name and we give you the address. Well, since we're dealing today with two Atlanta-based rappers, the Do For Self City of the Day is Atlanta. But check this out. And I'm telling you, I didn't plan this. I just happened to be, sifting through my black-owned business treasure chest, and I found this. This is an actual company in Atlanta that's black-owned. They sell their own brand of apparel, and it is called Versus. So definitely hit that up if you get the chance. If you're in the Atlanta area, it's actually at 493 Flat Shoals Avenue. I used to go up and down Flat Shoals all the time. Atlanta, Georgia, 30316. And those are the hours that you can catch it open. And I promise you, that was 100% random. It just happened to be. It ain't no coincidences when it comes to Allah. But make sure you hit up Versus in Atlanta as we deal with this Versus event, if you will. And the thing about Nation Town TV and Nation Town in general that I'm proud of, so we have a very diverse viewership. It's not really a certain age group. We get everything from teenagers to middle-aged, hip-hop fans, people who probably grew up on Motown, whatever the case may be. So let me make sure that I'm not losing anybody who may not be a hip-hop fan, who may not know what the Versus is. You should know what the Versus is. They had my girl Gladys going against Patti LaBelle a while back. But it's basically something that came up during this quarantine where established musicians and artists, predominantly R&B and hip hop, they clash based on their catalog. It's not like a singing competition or a rapping competition. It ain't like a battle rap match or nothing like that. It's actually them just comparing their catalogs. And it's really been a very positive and uplifting way of getting through this. It's one of the few highlights for some of our people through this quarantine. This quarantine has been a shock to the system for a lot of people. But I got to say, out of all the foolishness that the entertainment industry comes up with, this Versus is probably one of the best things that the entertainment industry has done. But when I heard about this particular competition, this particular Versus between Gucci Mane, who's also known as Guwap, that's kind of like his alias, and M.G.C, who now just goes by Jeezy. Knowing what I know about these two, I was a little worried because I know a little bit about the history. I consider myself a hip hop fan. I don't consider myself an expert, but I am a true fan. And I don't discriminate on types of hip hop that I listen to. If it's dope, I listen to it. And I'm very versed on these two artists. I consider myself a Jeezy fan, but I'm honestly not a fan of either one of them. A big fan, but I do respect both of these men. And I want to give you a little bit of background. The reason why I was worried about this one is because this is the one that everybody wanted to see. Every hip hop fan wanted to see. However, it was also one of the most controversial ones. Because this is how it went down. About 15 years ago, Jeezy had just came into the industry. He was a new rapper, but he was on fire. I mean, he was scorching hot. He was what I guess you could say NBA YoungBoy is now times two. And then right after he came out, Gucci came out, but on the independent scene. And what really set off Gucci's career was a song that they did together called So Icy. Now, these two artists have a lot in common because they are both the pioneers. Well, they're definitely pioneers of the down south so-called trap music. The first artist to really put that terminology out there was T.I. And then he was followed up by Jeezy and Gucci. I guess you could say as far as trap music is concerned, T.I., Gucci, and Jeezy are kind of like, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and what's my other one? What's my other man's name? That's on the 20. It slips my mind right now. They was all slave masters anyway. But Thomas Jefferson. So they like the George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson of trap music. But after they did that one song together, there was a beef, there was a misunderstanding and a issue about the song itself. Jeezy wanted that song to be on his debut album because he was making a major buzz before his first album even came out. And he wanted that song to be on his album. He actually raps first on the song. So he felt like it was his song, basically. And since he had more of a buzz with him, and the song took off and he was signed to a major label, he felt like it should be his song. Gucci actually, owned the rights to the song. And it was always supposed to be him featuring Jeezy in the first place. So that's the way they went with it. And then that became a war of words, classic hip hop style between them on different mixtapes and songs. And then what really took it to another level is the fact that an individual by the name of Pookie Loke attempted to rob Gucci. Some say he was sent to kill Gucci. Nobody has any proof of that unless you were a part of that circle and now you snitching. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the fact of the matter is they attempted to take his chain. That's the one thing they really tried to do. And if you dare to kill somebody, that's what you do. You get right to it. Not that I would know, but if you're going to kill somebody, you're going to kill somebody. You ain't going to reach for their chain first and then try to kill him. So they cornered him when he was with a young lady, and he fought back. He got a hold to a weapon. He shot in self-defense. This is Gucci I'm talking about. And this individual who went by the street name Pookie Loke was murdered. Pookie Loke was a part of Jeezy's clique, a part of his circle. Automatically assumed that that Jeezy was involved and that he sent them to kill him. Jeezy did say in a song that he put out a $10,000 bounty, not on Gucci's head, but on his chain. He had a notorious Bart Simpson chain, because if you look at Gucci, he kind of looks like a black Bart Simpson. If you remember back in the 90s, they had them black Bart Simpson t-shirts. And that's kind of what Gucci looks like, making fun of himself. He had this chain of diamonds made out of Bart Simpson that everybody was very familiar with, as well as a So Icy chain. So those are the chains that they went to get. They failed, and the brother was shot and killed. And that just took the beef to a whole other level. Jeezy kind of, at that point, stepped away from it, probably for legal reasons, as far as the back and forth. Gucci never came off of it. He probably mentioned it on the majority of his albums since the incident to one degree or another. So this has been an underlying beef between them over the last 15 years, and it never went anywhere. It was so serious because of the murder situation that it was almost, people didn't even want to talk about it. It wasn't your typical kind of beef. It wasn't Cool Mo D, LL Cool J. It wasn't even Dr. Dre and Easy E. It wasn't Nas and Jay-Z. You had blood spilled over this. That's what started it. It wasn't even Biggie and Pac, because Biggie and Pac, unless you count Pac's shooting in New York, there really was no blood spilled, and it definitely was no life taken. So that's what kind of sent this to another level. So for them to do this versus, if you're looking at it optimistic, it was a good thing. But knowing their history, I had a feeling that not only would this be the first negative versus, but that the enemy, you can't fathom the depths of Satan. And you always have to consider third party law. And with black people, we're so emotional that 9 times out of 10, when we have issue with another black person, there's usually a third party involved. I'm talking about all of our issues, not just celebrities and rappers. There's always a third party involved that nobody's really paying attention to. And it's usually our enemy, or they're being orchestrated by the enemy. So I really saw this as a terrible opportunity for the enemy to really, juice this with negativity. And I really believe to this day that they attempted it. But here's what really stands out about me. It's not the back and forth about Jeezy and Gucci. It's the fact that I paid very close attention to the aftermath, the social media comments, the social media posts. And while people were probably expecting Jeezy to get exposed, some might even think he did get exposed. Some people were probably expecting Gucci to get exposed. At the end of the day, it was really us. It was really us that got exposed. Shout out to everybody chiming in. Brother Edward Muhammad, wa alaikum salam, Latrell Porter, wa alaikum salam, Soldier. Man, I love your energy, brother. That's a beautiful brother. One of our strong brothers at Mos 27. Jerome Blakely, TC Alamu, Sister Khadijah, Muhammad Ali, wa alaikum salam. Make sure you hit us up, questions and comments. Also, of course, we got bills to pay. Hit us up. $ Nation Town TV. Show us some love. You can hit us with $1. You can hit us with a rack. We ain't gonna be mad at you if you go ahead and put that PlayStation 5 money on Nation Town. We will not be upset with you, but definitely show us some love. So what I'm gonna do real quick, if it be the will of Allah, family, I want to go over 5 things. Y'all know we've been doing a top 5 lately. I want to go over 5 ways that this Jeezy versus Gucci versus actually exposed us. It exposed us because, again, I paid very close attention. I surveyed all the reactions. And mind you, the reaction was across the board. It wasn't just, hip hop fans. It wasn't just, little wannabe dope boys, the ones you see walking around. It was fathers and mothers and grandpas and blue collar workers, white collar workers, so heavily entrenched in this and had so many opinions. I saw black folks literally seriously going at each other over this thing, almost as silly as we do with sports, probably even sillier, because we dealing with a situation where someone's life was taken. So I paid attention to that, and I realized that about 5 things were exposed. But before we get into it, I'm going to show you the very hostile situation, a moment where things almost went left. But I want you to pay attention based on the information I just gave you. If you're not familiar with this, for you that are familiar with this, you already know and you've already seen this. But also pay attention to what Jeezy said. Pay very close attention. Even pay attention to his body language. A lot of people had a lot to say about his body language. I'm gonna probably talk about that too. It ain't what it looked like. But I want you to pay attention. This is the part. Everything was normal up until this part where they were you know, going song for song, and everybody was anticipating coming up to this, is Gucci going to play a song called The Truth? That was the most explicit diss song from Gucci aimed at Jeezy that came out about 10 years ago, and everybody was wondering if he play that, it's going down. It's like, imagine Dr. Dre and Eazy-E, may Allah be pleased with Eazy. Imagine them doing the verses. Everybody knows that, hey man, if he played Dre Day, or if Eazy played nothing, real MF and G's, or the censored version is real Compton City G's, you know it's going down. So everybody knew that knew about this beef. But let's watch that moment when things got a little heated. A lot heated, very heated.
To a bad occasion. I took the summer, get you cold, and I know you still miss bud with you. I was screaming so icing was a neighborhood nigga. This AR is my backup, cause I don't need no nigga. Mustang hit with flock of set, let them guns drown, nigga. Used to ride the Birmingham with a lot of grounds, nigga. I'm just who I am, nigga, but I ain't span now, nigga. I know it's hard for you to sleep, know when you kill your homeboy. You left his son to be a bastard, won't even raise your own boy. Damn. Damn.
Broke the internet.
I tell you what.
Put that nigga ass in the dirt.
I tell you what.
Smoking on Pookie Load tonight.
I tell you what. I tell you what. This how we gonna do this.
Send some more, I'ma send them the same way. In a box back to you.
Are you doing too
Free
much
kill.
talking?
Free
Come on,
kill.
man. I tell you what though. See, when I even called you and extended this invite, my nigga, I did it as a real man. It's been 20 motherfucking years.
15
you still talking,
years.
Okay, well, how many? You still talking the same shit. You feel me? Still talking the same shit.
Hey man,
So
you
hold
gotta
on,
take
let me
that.
talk.
Listen,
Let me talk, my
listen,
nigga. Let me talk.
Listen.
Let me talk.
I don't want to talk. I'm through talking. It's your turn to do the song.
That's
what
right.
are we gonna
That's
do?
right. That's right.
Are we gonna do some music or
I tell you what. I tell you what. My nigga, I tell you what. It go like this. When I extended the invitation, I did it as a real man. You feel me? Because I said,
told you
hold on,
straight
let
off
me-
the
let me-
dribble.
let me-
I told you off the dribble, nigga, we can't do nothing if it ain't street. If I can't perform the truth, we
it's all
can't do
good.
it.
It's all
It's
good,
okay.
but let me
Hey,
say
man.
my piece. Let me say my piece.
Take off.
Let me say my piece. It's like this, bro. I extended my hand because I'm a real man. And the shit we came from in the street, dog, you seen it, we been through it, dog. 20 years. 20 years. And when I said I wanted to do this shit for the culture, that's what I wanted to do, nigga. I brought you here to show you the world care about what the fuck we got going on, because we are the culture. You feel me? Me and you. Where we came from. What we been through, nigga. Us. Me and you. All these kids out here doing what the fuck they do because they saw what went on with us, dog. So this shit ain't about me. This shit ain't about you. You feel what I'm saying? This shit by King Von. This shit by Doe B. This shit by Nipsey Hussle. This shit by motherfucking Pop Smoke, M3. And I'm real enough to do that, nigga, because one thing about it, 2 things for sure, 3 things for certain, nigga.
I'm the realest nigga in it. You already.
Let me do a little bit translation for the non-hip hop generation of hip hop fans out there. When Gucci said we smoking on Pookie Loke tonight, that's a very derogatory thing to say about an individual who was murdered. That's the verbiage that they've been using lately in the streets when they kill, when one of our brothers kills another brother. They'll even go on social media and go live and make posts saying we're smoking on, and then insert whoever that brother or sister's name was, you know, as if he's a bag of weed. They smoking on him, and that's the way they talk about someone that they murdered or that, you know, has been murdered. So that was an extreme and very derogatory thing for Gucci to do. As you saw, Jeezy's response, he really pointed out, because it was Jeezy that extended the olive branch, extended the offer to Gucci to come and do this and keep it positive. There's still some questions about what agreement they had as far as that song, because Jeezy had some songs where he said some things about Gucci and he never played those songs. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. The good news is this. There was an olive branch extended before this, and then they did something that was for hip hop fans who follow these two rappers, you know, they did something that was monumental. They went back. Remember, I told you their whole relationship started by, you know, doing a song together. And they never did that song together again. Usually when two artists have a hit song, like, hell, Monica and Brandy, The Boy Is Mine, or, you know, any other duet that you see in music, they'll go on tour with it. They'll perform on shows with it. They'll do big venues, small venues. They never performed that song because their beef started almost immediately after the song became popular. So what you saw that night, if you watched it, that was the first time they ever performed that song together live. And that was monumental. And after all of that, this is what was said.
This is historic shit. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Hey man, listen, I appreciate you for throwing out the olive branch. I accept that. No disrespect, it's all love.
Love, my
That's
nigga.
the
Let's
real
get it.
shit.
ASAP. That's what it is, baby. 20 years, nigga. 20 years, nigga.
Hey, holiday.
Hey. 20 years, nigga.
I salute you, holiday.
Tell Jay-Z and Nas they better watch out.
So like Gucci said, it was all love. And for Gucci to be the one to say that he appreciated the olive branch, that was huge. Because Gucci in this, he played the role of the villain in this whole scenario. He played the role of the knucklehead, and I'm going to touch on that in a minute. Now, some of y'all might be wondering, man, you know, why Nation Town? You know, it's been 3 days in 2020. 3 days to respond to something seems very long. Seems extremely long, you know, because everybody, like I said, we don't have that ambulance chaser mentality. We don't have that first on the scene mentality in Nation Town. And we always want to look at it from a slightly different view than other people. Because like I said, we're not going to go over a blow by blow. We're not going to go there. And everybody's already done that. What we're going to look at is the fact that, in my humble opinion, this exposed a great deal about us. So I'm going to get right down to it. The 5 things that this event, this historic event from a hip hop perspective, 5 things that it exposed about us, about you, about me, about everybody that watched it, regardless of your background. What did it expose? Well, first and foremost, it exposed, and by the way, I do know how to spell expose. That's a play on the word with the X. As you know, we are granted in the Nation of Islam, as opposed to the E at the beginning. It exposed our self-hate. Not necessarily Gucci's self-hate, not Jeezy's self-hate, our self-hate. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? It exposed our self-hate because when I read some of the comments, a lot of the commentary coming from hip-hop fans, I found it interesting. There were a lot of fans who said, and people said, oh man, Jeezy got punked. He got punked. He let him play that diss song right there in his face. That's something you've never seen. I mean, Versus is really a new concept, so you never saw Dr. Dre play, you know, Dre Day right in Eazy-E's face. You know, you never saw that kind of thing. You never saw Pac play Hit Him Up right in Biggie's face. You never saw that because there was never a platform for them to do that. So we saw that, and since Jeezy didn't, I guess, jump across that platform and try to strangle Gucci on live TV, even though they both pushing 40, I think Jeezy might already be 40. You expected these men with children. Gucci got a baby on the way. They both married. And I'm going to expose that in a minute as well. But these are both family men. You expected them to handle this like 2 20-year-old niggas in the club. So some people was like, oh, Jeezy got punked. Jeezy. Because it's so interesting how we have such a low amount of tolerance for each other. Such a low tolerance, not just for 2 rappers, but for our family, our black friends, black organizations, black concepts. We got a trigger emotional system. We easily triggered. We have no time for an olive branch, no time for thinking. We just feel like we just got to react and we got to do something. But it's interesting because we don't keep that same energy with our enemy. I mean, we vote, we celebrate, and we spend our money with amnesia. It must be amnesia. I'm trying to be nice to my people and say it's amnesia, because you must be voting with amnesia. Because we find ourselves voting for the same people who have done the most harm to us over the last 50 years. I ain't gonna say no names. I'm under instructions, but y'all know who I'm talking about. In a couple of days, it's going to be this so-called holiday or holiday called Thanksgiving, which is the celebration of a massacre of our native brothers. And what belonged to them was taken from them. And we're going to sit around with our mouths greasy, stomachs full, watching football, all happy. And you say, well, we ain't celebrating. Okay, well, do that every day then, if it ain't about Thanksgiving. But if you only are doing that on Thanksgiving, because there are some families in the South. I found out in the Deep South, there are families who have a special family dinner every last Thursday of the month. That's a thing in the Deep South. But most black people, they don't have a dinner like this until Thanksgiving. Look at the forgiveness. And then as Nation Town and myself, we always remind you, we spend 98% of our expendable income with the same enemy that we're constantly crying to, that we recognize as our oppressor. But that don't stop us from putting money in this spot. Jeezy said that he couldn't even listen to that song So Icy that they both made. It was one of the key components that set both of their careers off. Jeezy was already hot at the time, but that song just made him hotter. But he couldn't even listen to it because of their beef. I'm talking about in his own personal time. If the song came on, he had to cut it off. They missed out on a lot of money because they never went on tour with it. They never did any shows with it. And that's how rappers make most of their money. They don't make it off of CD sales. They damn sure don't make it off of streams today. But they left millions of dollars on the table based on this. Based on this so-called beef. So we miss out on money when it comes to each other. But we continually spend money with our enemy, and nobody has dissed us more than him. He got a diss song that they forced everybody to participate in the NFL and the NBA. The Star Spangled Banner, that's a diss song. That's a diss song to the Aboriginal. It's a violent diss song. They even had to cut out, they even had to edit a bar from that song. Our brother Colin Kaepernick pointed that out. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan pointed that out. They had to edit that song. The bombs bursting in air. They also had a part in there that talked about slaves and the Native American people. That was a diss song against the Aboriginal people here in the United States of America. And your child, unless they go to MUI or some other black and socially conscious school system, are being taught that song every day. And that's a diss song. So all the Aboriginal people of this world, and particularly America, a very violent diss song. So where is that energy for our enemy? Where is that energy? So that was the first thing that it pointed out. Shout out to everybody chiming in. TC Alamu said, I'm not sure if MGT was security, but I do know I did get word that the FOI in Atlanta was security. In fact, when you see major hip hop events in really any city, but particularly New York, Atlanta, or Los Angeles, you can almost guarantee the FOI is involved with securing, especially if it's a successful securing of the premises. But shout out for that information, dear sister TC. But so that's the number one thing. It exposed our self-hate. Everybody was a gangster after this verses. Everybody that watched it was not just a gangster. They became a gangster John Madden. You know, John Madden was a commentator. He did the play-by-play. Everybody was a Stephen A. Smith of gangsterdom. Oh, Jeezy should have did this. Oh, he got punked. But I mean, everybody, all these lames on the internet, suddenly a gangster, giving gangster commentary. But where was the gangster commentary for our real enemies? I'm still waiting on it. You about to pay them this Friday. You about to be standing out in the cold outside of a Best Buy or a Foot Locker or a Macy's or one of this devil's establishments, waiting to give them all your money, despite the fact that's the Illuminati that you watching on YouTube all the time. That's the Bilderbergers, the Rothschild. These are all these people that you always talking about with these spooky conspiracy theories, and a lot of it is true. But they're not rich because they have all the money. They're rich because they have all of your money. So who's really getting punked? But let's move on. Once again, make sure y'all hit us up, $NationTown on Cash App. Show us some love. Make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure you sharing this. Again, we going over how this Jeezy versus Gucci versus battle exposed us, particularly black people, black hip hop fans. It exposed the hell out of us. That was the first thing. It exposed our self-hate. Let's go to the second thing that it exposed clearly. Oh man, this is the one right here. It exposed our fake woke and fake conscious Negroes. Again, this is based on what I surveyed, what I saw on social media. I saw Muslims, self-proclaimed Muslims, all types, Orthodox, Nation of Islam. I saw self-proclaimed Hebrew Israelites, self-proclaimed Moors, self-proclaimed Christians, self-proclaimed spiritual Negroes, talking like straight savages. I mean the bow tie, the headpiece, the kufi, the jalabia, the fringes, the fez with the tassel, the sage, all of that just flew right off. Just a little sprinkle of foolishness, and all of that just flew off. Now I saw brothers and sisters that are on my friends list and that I see on Instagram and Facebook, not only talking like savages, but sounding like they 18, 19. Some of them I know are 40 plus, 30 plus, with children, bills, responsibilities, and then claiming some type of higher knowledge, but then going back and forth arguing about which one of these rappers is the most gangster. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Because I'm going to be real with you, the speed, please listen. The speed in which your religious ideological costume comes flying off. Whenever you get in an argument or a difference of opinion, the quicker your religious or philosophical costume come flying off, that's the measure of what you are as far as that's concerned. The measure of my Islam as a believer, as a follower of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, is how quickly do I take this bow tie off and throw it across the room at you after we have a disagreement or after I feel like you've done something negative to me. How quickly does it come off? If it comes off immediately, then I wasn't much of a Muslim. If my fez comes off immediately, then I wasn't much of a Moor. If my fringes come off immediately, I wasn't much of a Hebrew Israelite. Because if you spiritually grounded in any kind of way, that means you grounded. That means you on your square. Can't no little emotion, a little feud between two rappers that you don't even know can knock you off that square. But that tells you who we really are. So I thought that was interesting how you had Muslims, you had Moors, you had Hebrew Israelites, you had Christians. I mean, all the so-called spiritual sisters was throwing their sage at each other. Dashikis coming off over these two rappers who you'll probably never meet or never really know. And who knows? Like I said, you can't fathom the depths of Satan. You don't even know if Satan himself set both of them up to do this. If this is just the last the last part of their contract, a contract that was probably executed 15 years ago, and they just fulfilled the last year, the last part of that. I mean, you can't fathom the depths of Satan because they're scientists and they manipulate us with our emotions. So that was the second thing. Our fake woke and fake conscious Negroes you couldn't tell the difference all of a sudden. You know, when you go on social media, you can usually tell, okay, that looks like a street Negro. Okay, that's a so-called Muslim. Okay, that's a Moor. That's a this, that's a that. But after this verses, if you took the temperature of social media, you couldn't tell who was who. You couldn't even tell ages no more. You couldn't even tell ages. Everybody was sounding like they were 19. Everybody sounded like they were 16. But I digress. Shout out to everybody chiming in. Make sure you hit us up. Make sure you hit us up. Brother Richard Thompson says, insanity of this triggering BS. That's right. That's right. Brother Tevis says this needs to go viral. All praises due to Allah. Sister Christine, assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam, family. But let's go to the third thing, because we're going to get through this real quick, and to the point. Make sure y'all share this. Make sure y'all share this. Make sure y'all share this. Now, the third thing that it exposed is pretty simple. Pretty simple. It exposed our ignorance. Like I said, not Jeezy's. If you think Jeezy was ignorant, you've always felt that way. If you think Gucci is ignorant, you've always felt that way. I got a newsflash for you. I seriously doubt either one of them are ignorant. They both. If you really pay attention to what they say, what they rap about, their interviews, these are two very intelligent brothers who have done a lot with their careers, made a lot of money. You know, set up a lot of jobs for black people. Created more jobs than your favorite YouTube scholar. So it's not their ignorance, it was our ignorance. How did they do that? Well, it was a couple of things. There was a part in this verses where Gucci, you know, he kind of did it in a joking way. He kind of compared his outfit to what Jeezy was wearing. Jeezy had this custom basketball jersey, would look like some jeans and a pair of Air Force Ones and a bandana around his head. Gucci bragged that his outfit from head to toe was a $10,000 outfit. Jeezy's retort, his rebuttal to that was, you know, yeah, you got on the $10,000 outfit, but I own half of Atlanta. Now, of course, that's hyperbole, but he's insinuating that he has a strong real estate portfolio. He owns a lot of property, a well-propertied man, as they say. So that obviously came back as a strong comeback, a real grown man comeback. Yeah, you walking around with this, you know, weirdo European man man's name all over your body, and you paid $10,000 to wear a white man's name on your back. Cool, but I'm owning land. And those of you familiar with the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you know that is a top priority. That must be a top priority for the Aboriginal people, to own land. So it really came off like a cold little comeback for Jeezy. So here's what we did. Some of the fans who, you know, were cheerleading for Gucci. There was a lot of cheerleaders involved in this. Grown male cheerleaders with facial hair and Rick Ross beards and pot bellies and 4 or 5 children that they may or may not take care of, sitting up here cheerleading for these two rappers. And some of the Gucci cheerleaders were like, they went as far to even do something called look up, actual records, state Georgia records, to see if they could find what property Jeezy owned. And they looked at it through his actual government name. His name is Jay Jenkins. So one individual pulled this up. And as you can see, these are two records. Like I have access to one of these sites called Property Radar. It's another one called Foreclosure Radar. So I'm assuming this is state records that they looked up. And they looked up his government name, Jay Jenkins. And they found these two properties. So they used this as a means of, I guess, making fun of Jeezy, saying you were bragging about all this real estate. But I looked it up and you only own two properties. That was very ignorant. And I hope the brother that was circulating this, I hope he recanted it, and I hope he knows better now. Because the bottom line is, if you have a real estate portfolio, even some people who only own one property, I've owned property, but especially if you got a real estate portfolio, because I work on actual real estate lawsuit court paperwork all the time, and I hardly ever see the plaintiff or the property owner their actual name as, on the case name. In other words, most people who own a lot of property, those properties are under trust, not under individual names. Sometimes the trust is named after them. Sometimes it's named after their family. If their last name is Johnson, it's the Johnson Family Trust. If it's Muhammad, it's the Muhammad Family Trust. Or sometimes they just make it the address. A lot of these big apartment complexes, if the apartment complex is 555 Willow Lane, the trust company name will be 555 Willow Lane Trust for a 100-unit apartment complex. It's not going to be under the majority owner's name. If it's John Johnson, it ain't going to be John Johnson owns this 100-unit building. No, it's under a trust for many good reasons, most of them tax reasons and financially viable reasons. So that was one way that it was a very embarrassing thing that exposed our ignorance. And when I say ignorance, I mean the actual definition of it, which is to not know. Another thing that I find interesting, as I kind of alluded to before, Gucci was flaunting a Gucci outfit. Now, from what I understand, he got that nickname Gucci not just as a means of, flaunting how much Gucci apparel he wears, but his father, his street name was Gucci. Now, of course, Gucci is not some name that just came up in the streets. There's an actual background to that, of course, and it all relates to the brand Gucci. What you're looking at right here, it just looks like it's from Central Casting. Central Casting, fat, rich, white man. But that's Gucci, the founder of the Gucci brand. And I wanted to bring this up because it's a testament to what we should be doing as black people. First of all, nobody has more style than us. It ain't an Italian, it ain't a homosexual anywhere in Europe that has more style than the black man. None of them can get with us. But the interesting thing about Gucci, first of all, he started small. He made bags. If you ever see people with their Gucci bags and duffel bags, that's how the company started. He was a bellhop at a hotel, and he became almost enamored or obsessed with all the fancy bags that the clientele would come with, that he was hauling around as a bellhop. In fact, there's a very old company, and I had to post this just for hilarity, a very old company that makes bags, a European company that makes bags long before Gucci, called H.J. Cave and Sons, KV and Sons. But this is one of the oldest bag companies, and this was one of Gucci's favorite brands, and it inspired him. Now, here's what he did, though. This is the only reason I'm telling you about Gucci. He was a huge fan of this brand, but instead of just working like a dog as a bellhop to continue buying or trying to buy these expensive bags on his bellhop salary, he started his own brand. And he started extremely small. He made them by hand. He sold them 5 at a time. He had investors coming to him and trying to, buy him out and get him to take the brand global. And in his lifetime, he never did that. It wasn't until he died in 1953 that his sons took over the company and made it a global brand. But even now, Gucci, you just ain't gonna run into Gucci just anywhere. You have to get, authentic Gucci from boutiques and whatnot. You ain't gonna find it at Walmart. You ain't gonna find it at every Macy's or every department store. But my point is this: instead of, he was inspired by another brand, but instead of just spending his rent money on that brand and spending all his money on that brand, he started his own. Not because he was some master with a sewing machine, but because he just liked what he saw with this company, so he started his own. Most of y'all watching have never heard of this company, but because this man started his own, he actually eclipsed the company that inspired him. So that's a message to all of us who, we work hard, we get out, we get some money, and I want to buy all this Gucci, all this Versace, all this Polo, all this kind of stuff. And you black or Hispanic, Aboriginal, don't nobody have more style. And we set the trends, the real trend. You want to know what white European style really looks like, fashion style? Pay attention to those white fashion shows where some 80-pound white boy walking down a runway with a trash can on his head, wearing a tutu with one sock on, and a teddy bear in one hand, and a Nintendo controller in the other, just the weirdos. That's their style. That's really them. But that's like a concept that they just kind of throw out there to see what people are going to say. But that kind of stuff you never see in stores. They always bring it back down to earth on something that they know we will wear and that we will spend all our money on. But that's real European styles. They don't have style. We take their clothes and we make it look fly. We make it look fly. So you can't tell me that we can't do the same thing. So I wanted to point that out. But one more thing I want to point out about how this exposed our ignorance. I want to talk about Gucci for a minute. Because like I said, Gucci did a good job. He's done a good job in his entire career painting himself as Mr. Dope Boy. I don't doubt that he sold dope before. He didn't have a record, didn't have a police record before he didn't have a record before he put out a record. And that's the case with a lot of these artists. But he played the role very well in that Versus as the dope boy, as the ignorant Negro, you tried to kill me, so I'm gonna keep it real, brother. He played that role well, but I listen to my brothers and sisters that are in entertainment, and I know a dummy when I hear one. And I'm not going off their dialect or nothing silly and basic like that. I'm listening to what they actually saying, and I'm watching what they doing. Gucci is not a fool. In fact, I think he fooled you. And he probably been fooling us for 15 years. And I think the culmination of that was that Versus. Because everybody who was rooting for him made it like he was the tough guy. He was the gangster. He was the Killmonger. He was the Joker. He was the villain that everybody loved. But that's ignorant. Because the truth of the matter is, Gucci went to college. This is his actual college ID, Lawson State in Alabama, a historically black trade school in Alabama, Birmingham. This is him in high school. I don't think that's a $10,000 fit. He got on khakis, a Tommy Hilfiger polo. Look like a nice dude, nice little young man, don't he? Now, the brothers I grew up with that was in the streets, the street life didn't start when they were 20, 21, 25. You know, I got brothers who went inside who got locked up in middle school and still have not seen the light of day. When it comes to real street life, that starts early. When you see somebody that starts getting tatted up and selling dope and everything when they 24, 25, that tells you a lot. Gucci's a smart man, and he plays a lot of us into thinking that he's some kind of thug and he's some kind of ignorant dude and he just keeping it real and he keeping it. No, man. He got the same level of college education as Bill Gates. Same amount of college education as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He didn't finish, but and here was his major. His major was computer programming. That is not a fool's choice of subjects. You got to really be a smart dude. You got to be mathematically inclined to even think about doing computer programming. And he made good grades. He made good grades. Now, I'm not saying that to make fun of him. That's a great thing. On what planet? Why are black people even in the mentality that being academically successful is a bad thing? But here's my thing. Why is he not telling you that? Why is he not telling your children that in the raps? Why are you not considering that when you want to decide who was gangster and who was not? Just something to consider. But that's one of the reasons why it exposed our ignorance. But check this out. It not only exposed our ignorance, but it also exposed our generational ignorance. Our generational ignorance. What do I mean by generational ignorance? Let's listen to what Jeezy says right here in this particular part. Listen to him.
All these kids out here doing what the fuck they do because they saw what went on with us, dog. So this shit ain't about me. This shit ain't about you. You feel what I'm saying? This shit by King Von. This shit by Doe B. This shit by Nipsey Hussle. This shit by motherfucking Pop Smoke, M3.
He's pointing out, like our last episode, we talked about, it wasn't our last episode, it was the one before that where we talked about the two murders in hip hop that took place over the last few weeks where two rappers were murdered. When you pay attention to those artists that were involved in those two different murders, I guarantee you they grew up listening to both of these men. So Jeezy was right and exact on what he said. And see, when we so caught up in child's play and sport and play and foolishness while there are babies running around looking like us, I touched on this on the previous episode too, but we don't really teach them nothing. A lot of the dumbest things we do, we just inadvertently pass it down to our children. So you have generational ignorance getting passed down, generation to generation. We at a point now as a generation of young people, we can't say nothing about older generations no more. We done wore that out. We disqualified ourselves. And here's one very clear version, because I want to make this very clear. Here was the consensus from a lot of hip hop fans. Some of them the next day got up and went to some white man's company with a name tag on, and they saw their boss. They was like, "Hey, Jim," But the night before, they was Twitter fingers on social media talking about, "Man, Jeezy a punk ass nigga." The very next day, they was at Pop Copy, like on Dave Chappelle, waving at customers, or doing everything their white boss tell them to do. But it was this consensus that Jeezy got punked. Man, Jeezy, how you gonna even 50 Cent, this grown man who, has an issue, he has children that don't even claim him. I hate to say it, got to keep it real, but it's very embarrassing when grown black men behave this way. But it's this consensus that Jeezy got punked. He should have, like I said, he should have jumped over the platform. I don't know, drop kick Gucci in his mouth or pulled out a gun and shot him or something like that. You know, just foolishness. But let's play that game. Let's run with that. You feel like Jeezy should have, you know, man, he made fun of your dead homeboy. Whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. Okay. You feel like Guwop, a.k.a. Gucci, punked him. You know, that's somebody who since 2012 has been punking every black person since 2012, making a mockery out of an entire group of people in an entire country since 2012. This caveman right here has been goo-whopping black people for 8 years, almost a decade. Like I explained, Gucci got up there and said, you know, we smoking on Pookie Loc tonight. That was a very derogatory thing to say. But let's not act like we didn't know Trayvon Martin. For those that don't know, this is George Zimmerman, the man who murdered our brother Trayvon Martin. Let's not act like we wasn't tripping over Trayvon, because we was all up in the streets with our picket signs. Black Lives Matter, please stop killing us. So we cared. But did he care? We all know that Trayvon had nothing but a can of Arizona tea and some Skittles on him. But look at this. George Zimmerman more than paid off all his legal fees by going around and doing autograph sessions where he was autographing Confederate flag t-shirts and packs of Skittles for white supremacists. And all the internet gangsters who were claiming that Jeezy got punked last week, I haven't seen one of them run up on George Zimmerman yet. He auctioned off his gun for what I think was, it went for $250,000. Every time I see a picture of George Zimmerman, he's getting fatter and he looks happier. So I'm saying to all the internet gangsters who feel like Jeezy got punked, and if you was Jeezy, you would have jumped over that platform and you would have did this and did that and did this. Okay, before you get to Gucci, let's go see about George Zimmerman. Like I posted on Facebook earlier this week, there are some people who don't believe in God. They feel like they need more proof that God exists. I understand, because this is a world that throws out a lot of confusion about God. There's some people who are so scorned and so tired on the so-called dating scene that don't believe in love no more, because they done had a bunch of bad relationships. So they don't believe love even exists. They don't believe God exists, don't believe love exists. I understand. Let me tell you what Brother Landon don't believe exists. I don't believe that black gangsters really exist. For two reasons. One, because crackers like this are still walking around, breathing, making money, getting fat. He even caught another charge that he got off on since then. Then been to jail a couple of times, nobody harmed a hair on his head. And then when I look around every black community, whether it's a big city like Los Angeles, Atlanta, New York, Chicago, or a small city like Little Rock, Tulsa, Oklahoma, you know, Grand Rapids, whatever, Gary, Indiana. Most of street violence comes based off of territory. That's a common occurrence here in Los Angeles. A black man walk down the wrong street, somebody going what they call bang on him. Where you from, homie? Where you from, cuz? Where you from, blood? But you go to any black neighborhood here in America, you're going to see a Korean or some white person that owns property on every corner, and they making money hand over fist, selling liquor, selling swine, selling trash food, selling pornography, selling guns, pawn shops. Who's banging on them? So based on that, just like some of y'all don't believe in God because some of the stuff in the Bible don't make sense to you, or you don't believe in love because, these niggas ain't and these women ain't Okay, well, these black gangsters ain't as far as I'm concerned, because you got occupiers on every corner in the black community, and you got devils like this still breathing. So I don't believe in black. Some people don't believe in Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, dinosaurs, leprechauns. I don't believe in black gangsters. So y'all can miss me with that. Last but not least, shout out to everybody chiming in. Sister Sandra from Moss 27. Brother Richard says, this is an accurate depiction of the Jeezy Gucci Mane scenario. Thank you, sir, for this root knowledge. We must do better, but I feel with Joe Biden in the White House, more of the same may be ahead. And I kind of touched on that earlier. If you really feel like Jeezy should have jumped over that platform, well, just keep that same energy when the next election come up. And somebody who has a history of locking us up and throwing away the key and calling us predators is asking for your vote. Don't get punked. Don't get Jeezy punked. Don't get goo-wopped. So I'll leave that at that. So the last thing, before we get up out of here, the last thing that was exposed. If you paid very close attention, you got a pretty good understanding as to why prisons are so filled with us. You saw firsthand. If you didn't know nothing about black people, and you probably had it in the back of your mind, why there's so many black people in prison? We only 13% of the population, but we 60% of some prisons. No less than 30% of any, even in states where we don't even have a large population. You go to a state prison in South Dakota, and we still are outnumbering our population statistics. We 15% of prisons in South Dakota, in Idaho. And you're probably wondering, how is that? Well, if you paid attention to the aftermath and the response to this Jeezy and Gucci versus, you found out. Now, let's talk about the obvious reason why the prison industrial complex has exploded and has been a problem amongst us. Of course, it was the crime bill. Of course, it was the prison industrial complex, the industry of prisons being built faster than schools. All of those things absolutely contributed and was the key aspect of it that really, pushed it over the edge. But there's a couple of other reasons that we don't talk about in our community as to why our prisons are so packed with us. Look at this chain gang that you're looking at right here. All black. Prisons are not really segregated. But this particular chain gang, almost all Aboriginal. I think I see one white boy. I'm going to tell you a reason why our prisons are so packed with us, and we're going to get up out of here, and we don't really talk about it. There's something in the black community called snitching. Now, in my humble opinion, and a lot of brothers and sisters who are involved in the street life agree with this opinion, because I really got this opinion from brothers and sisters that I know that are in the streets. I don't think that snitching is just talking to the police. Snitching is talking to the police when your hands are just as dirty as the person you snitching on. You in the same industry, even if you're not directly involved with that particular crime. You sell dope, he sell dope, and you give the police information on what you know he did. That's snitching. If you're a taxpayer, you just somebody trying to get by. And the majority of black people in our communities are hard-working, non-gang affiliated taxpayers. So when grandma, or even some hard-working single father, there are a lot of these now. Don't let BET fool you. It's a lot of hard-working, everyday black people who don't get involved with any foolishness. When they see something and they say something to the police, that's not snitching to me. But it's all of these brothers and sisters who y'all look at and y'all think are so gangster, they so hood, they so reputable. Oh man, that's little so-and-so and so-and-so from so-and-so block. Yeah, and he was doing a whole lot of so-and-sos in the interrogation room too, giving all the so-and-sos, all the names, government names, middle names, cousins' names. Because a lot of these so-called thugs and so-called gangsters that we think are so cool, when they go down to the precinct, it turned into an episode of the First 48. There's a lot of snitching going on. Now, why am I bringing up snitching? Because social media turned into the First 48 after this versus. It turned into the First 48. And those who watch First 48, you know it is a snitch circus. Let me tell you a secret about police officers and detectives. Y'all ready for this? This is groundbreaking information that most black people apparently don't know. They're not that good at their job. They not. Don't let these movies fool you. It ain't no Columbos and Dick Tracy's in real life. They just not that good. They not that good. A lot of them are boneheads. They're not that good. They lazy. They're not good at their jobs. They really don't care when it's us that get killed. So they don't really put a good foot forward. The only saving grace for all of these police precincts is that they know how to get information, not from everyday people. It's actually the taxpayers who are not involved in any way that keep their mouth closed the most. It's people that are actually involved in that life that do all the snitching. That's why. That's one of the key components as to why the prisons in your state, no matter where you are so filled with us, people and brothers that look like me. I was blessed to be able to speak a couple of times at Lancaster State Prison here in California. And I really enjoyed it. Those brothers had great spirits, but that whole time, both times I spoke to them, it was like 2 hours each time. But when I was blessed to speak to them, representing the Nation of Islam in Mosque 27, it was breaking my heart the whole time I'm looking at these brothers. Because they were young, they were full of energy and vitality. And I know 80% of the brothers sitting in front of me, in both of those situations, somebody snitched on them. Somebody who like to call themselves hard and call themselves a gangster snitched on them. Not somebody grandma, not somebody's uncle who work at the gas station or work down at the plant or work at, no. Little so-and-so loc. Little so-and-so from so-and-so block snitched on. And we see little so-and-so to this day walking up and down the street acting like he hard, and we all think he hard because we probably know some dirt that he did. But he's a snitch. It's a lot of snitches. But then the funny thing is, on social media, you had all these people who talking gangster, but they went into so much detail about what they think happened. I'm going to say it again, what they think happened between Gucci and Jeezy. So-and-so did this, went there, killed this person, said this and did this, giving all this free information. The DA in Atlanta might have enough evidence now just by perusing Facebook and Instagram to reopen the case and charge Jeezy. Based on us running our mouths. Well, he the one that sent this such and such to do the hit and Just shut up. Stop talking. Why do I have to tell people who think that they hood and think that they gangster? I'm a FOI. I was never gang affiliated, but why do I have to tell you to shut up? And you want to talk about who's gangster, but you running your mouth about criminal activity on something that when you post something on Facebook, if you post something on Facebook or Instagram, more people will see it in 15 minutes than will see it in 15 days on a billboard on the busiest highway in your city. One post on Facebook, even if you ain't got that many followers, more people will see it in 15 minutes. Think about it. Last time you were zooming down the highway, when was the last time you looked up and read an entire billboard? You don't. How often do you read a whole post on Facebook? Every day, all day. So if we're going to have that stop snitching culture, well, that especially goes for those of you who like to play John Madden and Stephen A. Smith of the streets and trying to say who's gangster and who's not. I tell you who's not gangster. Those of us that are on social media all day playing First 48 about events that you know nothing about. And I'm going to leave that where it is. Another thing that it exposed, as far as how so many of us are in prison, it exposed the lack of maturity amongst a lot of us. One of the worst things you can do is let your enemy know what can make you fly off the handle, what can make you lose your composure. And based on what I'm reading on social media, everybody has an easy trigger, an easy button on their lapel that can trigger them immediately. That's how a lot of brothers get locked up as well. Spur of the moment, somebody disrespected them. They didn't like the way that nigga looked at him. Mind you, George Zimmerman's still walking around getting fat, but that brother looked at you wrong at the swap meet, so you domed him. You put a hole in his head. So we don't have any control over our emotions. And then lastly, another thing, everybody was talking about two grown men's money. How much money Jeezy got? How much? I saw somebody post their net worths and all this. They got something in the streets called pocket watching. Pocket watching. That's how a lot of brothers get locked up. They pocket watch a brother. Oh, he look like he got money, and then they rob him. Turns out the brother, all the money the brother got is what you see. It's in that car, it's in that jewelry he got on, and that $10,000 outfit, and then he got $15 in his bank account. And then you rob him for basically nothing, get caught, and now you in prison for the next 20 some odd years. So we doing a lot of pocket watching, we doing a lot of snitching, and we losing control of our emotions. We not rising above emotions. Last but not least, family, we're going to get up out of here. Speaking of rising above emotions, one thing that was very clear, and I'm so proud as a believer and a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that the last two biggest events in hip hop, the last couple of months, directly tie to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. The previous event was our brother Busta Rhymes with his fantastic album, ELE2, where he had a song named Master Fard Muhammad. Now, what did this verses between Jeezy and Gucci have to do with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? Well, it's pretty obvious when you watch it that one of them has been taught directly by this beautiful brother over my shoulder, as you see here. And those familiar with the Nation of Islam, we have something called our study guides, where it says self-improvement is the basis for community development. Study Guide 18 deals specifically with rising above emotion into the thinking not of a nigga, not of a gangster, not of a thug, not of a stepper, not of a real nigga, but of a God, which is the true nature of the Aboriginal man here in the hills of North America. And we also just passed the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. And like I said, I got to point out how disappointed I was to see supposedly conscious Negroes or woke Negroes, many of which were either sympathizers of the minister or actual believers in the Nation of Islam, playing that childish game of which nigga is the biggest nigga. When you have this teaching, when you call yourself conscious or woke, the Million Man March, what it really accomplishes is that it set out a blueprint that we should all duplicate on a daily basis in our own individual lives. That's exactly what Brother Jeezy did. He had a micro Million Man March right there on that verses. They atoned. He went through a hip hop version of atonement right there in front of 2 million people live. And if you think you smarter than Gucci, if you think you smarter than Jeezy, ask yourself this: when was the last time you had a day of atonement with somebody that you have a problem with in your life, like the minister asked you to do? I'm thinking about it myself right now. I don't have a problem with too many people. But that's a question we gotta ask. We think we so smart and so woke and so conscious. You got this brother who been selling dope since he was 15, who had the wisdom and the knowledge, not just because he met the minister in person. I guarantee you, most of you watching this have heard more lectures from the minister and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad or Maulana Karanga or Stokely Carmichael or whoever than Jeezy has. But he had enough sense to atone with this brother, to hand out an olive branch. He didn't go through all the steps. That would have made for a very weird, a very weird verses. But it was obvious that this brother has been learning from somebody. It's obvious that he walked into that verses in a hip hop way with the spirit of the Million Man March. It's obvious. So with that said, family, let's make sure that our bow ties are on tight, our headpieces are on tight, our fezzes are on tight, our fringes are on tight, your dashiki is on tight, your sage is tight in your hand. Whatever it is you claim, your cross around your neck is really on tight, meaning that you really live in that life, that you're really about the life you claim. Okay, Jeezy claimed to be a gangster. Okay, Gucci claimed to be a gangster. But what do you claim? Because every time there's some foolishness that they put out there, some distraction in hip-hop or entertainment, I see a lot of bow ties, headpieces, fezzes, dashikis just melt off like an ice cube in hell. So just something for y'all to think about. I thank you for y'all time. I'm hungry. I'm about to shut this down. I've been out all day on the blacktop with our people. We had a beautiful food giveaway on what we call here in LA the East Side, 103rd and Wilmington. Shout out to all the people who enjoyed that and got that free food, free turkeys. Beautiful situation, as well as the Peace Ride Sunday. Shout out to our beloved Western Regional Student Minister Abdul Malik Saeed Muhammad. No matter what you believe and what you think you know about Thanksgiving, a lot of us will be traveling or will be around family. Be safe. Coronavirus is real. And, keep our indigenous brothers and sisters in mind, whatever you do. And Friday, let's not, in case I don't talk to you before Friday, let's not fund our oppressor. Don't get punked. Don't get goo-wopped by your real enemy. So with that said, I'm your brother Landon X, and I'm going to leave you as I greeted you in the words of peace.